Welcome to BFA Q&A. It's our first one ever. Luke, if you want to go ahead and get us going.
Thank you for helping us reach our goals as far as follows on Facebook. We really appreciate it. We're continuing to push through. We've gotten good traction on Instagram. We are going to be real soon here putting out a release schedule so you guys have a better idea what's coming out when and where you could find it. More of our long form videos are going to end up being on our YouTube, and we're going to be having a lot more picture posts, short stuff like that on Instagram. Of course, on our Facebook, you will be finding links to everything.
We're also going to start releasing, this is just kind of an input, we're going to start releasing videos in series. So I know coming up, something to look forward to, I'm going to start coming out with a hip bump series, which is kind of taking that first video along a bunch of different options. I use the hip bump to set up a lot of different things. If you've trained with me, you're well aware of that. And then you are doing...
I wanted to work a couple things. I'm not sure whether or not... How about you put in the comments whether you prefer me to work a series that's my top half guard game. I've got some nasty attacks from there, ways of keeping people guessing. Or I was wanting to do a series that teaches how to hold pads. That's something near and dear to my heart. And if you guys are curious, I would love to, because I want to get Jordan, take him from very little, almost no striking experience at all, to a proficient striker. I'd like for you guys to be able to see that journey and learn also how to handle the mitts and stuff as we go.
Yeah, so let's hop into the questions.
Yep, sounds good. So thank you guys so much for contributing questions. We appreciate you guys participating and putting stuff forward. We got some really good ones. And we will make sure to touch on all of this and hopefully give you guys semi-thoughtful responses depending on what it is and what we've got for you. All right, so the first question we got is, with limited time to train in BJJ was the what I understood this to mean, where should you focus your attention? Like the avenues presented were mentality, conditioning, technique, fundamentals, such.
Ooh. I don't know. That's a tough one. My initial thought is I think conditioning comes with time. I think that's why a bunch of people get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if you're not getting it from a competitive aspect. My initial go-to is definitely focusing on the fundamentals and kind of the mindset around it, because that's what helps you retain. I know there's a bunch of high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes that are still competing based off of the fundamentals and still winning because they simply remember that. I know I told you about an example. My head coach, Kenny Kim, out of Marietta, he always uses the example of jiu-jitsu being kind of like an artist, teaching painters how to paint.
Sure.
So essentially how he describes it is the first thing he's trying to do is he's trying to teach you how to paint. He's trying to teach you how to hold a brush, what types of paints to use, what types of strokes you need to use. And then later down the road, essentially, if you were to ask the room, hey, I want everyone to paint a house. Yeah. If everyone were to present their work, they'd have a completely different looking house. All correct, but as their jiu-jitsu develops, they're going to do arm bars slightly different. There's going to be different variants. There's going to be different things like that.
Sure.
The essential job at the beginning is let's teach the fundamentals. Let's teach them what postures. Let's teach them kind of where you're safe, where you're not safe, basics of guard and things like that.
So no matter what kind of house, it's got to have a good foundation.
It's got to have a good foundation.
Exactly. So I completely
and that's
agree.
why you see everyone does submissions completely differently.
I think that remains true. I mean, it wasn't long ago that Hodger Gracie was running jiu-jitsu, and he's got a very simple game. I mean, essentially everything in there, cross-collar, back attacks, it's all 101. It was nothing fancy. And I think that translates to MMA as well. You know, that's where more of my expertise lie. And it's exactly the same. You've got to think, like, there's not many true, I'm only good at one thing specialists or particularly fancy flowery fighters who don't have good fundamentals that reign at the top. But we don't have to look far to see GSP, who essentially ruled a whole division with a jab and a double leg.
Yeah.
Bread and butter techniques. Keep it simple.
Well, and I can speak for my own jiu-jitsu journey. I started off at Creighton MMA in Gwinnett, moved off to work and things like that. But he was very heavy on the fundamentals. I mean, that's all I did.
That's how Rory and Adam are at SBGF.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I came back to the game 7-8 years later and could still hold my own. Was still a high-level jiu-jitsu, just because the stuff that I retained was the fundamentals. So, all right, next question. Oh, this is a good one. What do non-fighters get wrong about fighters?
I think I asked, this was a great question. I think I asked a version of this to Lawson when we did our segment with him. And that's because, like, if you're not in that back room with the fighters warming up, it's a whole different world. One of them that I would say is that they are usually pretty affable. Like, although things will get tense in the press conference, when it's not the two people who are fighting each other, even backstage warming up, I mean, if you meet them, like, generally fighters are pretty agreeable. In my experience, maybe I've only had, like, good experiences, but I've never disliked somebody I've even fought. I've always gotten along, and of course, I don't butt head too much with anybody I train with or anything. I think something that people get wrong is that tough has to come with mean. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary at all, and I think most fighters are able to separate that.
It's kind of interesting you said that, because we beforehand decided not to share answers, and that's literally what mine was. Is they're just great dudes, man.
Yeah.
And part of it might just be the structure of jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's because if there was that one guy who, excuse my language, just being an asshole to everyone.
Sure.
Their professor, their sensei, their coach, whatever they call it, is going to have a conversation with them real quick.
Yeah.
Because that
Because
has
it reflects
a horrible reputation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it reflects poorly.
So that's mine. They're all great dudes, and if they're not going to last, because there's kind of there's a level of humbleness and a level of, kind of lowering yourself that you go through in those first couple years that you're not expecting. That kind of does change that mentality.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's true. The next question is our thoughts on the Askren versus Paul. This is coming out soon, so hopefully this will drop before the fight takes place. But what are your thoughts on Askren versus Paul? Overall, I don't think it's in a specific avenue. Just what are your overall impressions?
I think it's ridiculous that it's a thing. At the same time, if it's making a bunch of money, I understand the business side. That's my background. I get the business side. In terms of who's going to win, I want to say Askren because he's a fighter. However, his recent videos of him boxing, and I'm not even a striking expert by any means, but it certainly does not inspire confidence.
Are you getting flashbacks of the Ronda Rousey shadowboxing footage?
It's just, it does not inspire any confidence. I don't know how I feel about it. And to be honest, Logan Paul, when you watch him in some of his matches, when you watch his shadowboxing and things like that, he's got crisp boxing. However,
he's got power.
What's his sample size?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
You go up against, if Conor McGregor's going up against a world-class striker like Mayweather, it looks very different than him going up against someone who doesn't know how to strike. Yeah. Or in fact, it might look similar. You really don't know the level of the guy until they're more evenly matched.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. And Askren looks goofy doing everything. I mean, he's one of the best wrestlers.
There are good boxers who are awkward.
Yeah.
And that's part of what their appeal is. So it is interesting. First off, I don't like questions of like, does this thing have the right to exist? Like, if people want to see it and they're willing to pay money, it has a right to exist. Do I think this is a legitimate boxing match?
I don't know what it is.
No, it's two non-boxers fighting in a non-boxing match, and I believe headlining a major pay-per-view card. That's the only aspect that bothers me.
I read something. I don't know the announcers.
If you sign a contract and the athletic commission signs off, you have a right to fight whoever you want, and if people want to pay money, that's fine. The only part that makes me feel weird is that there's always really talented, talented contenders fighting on the undercard and getting paid, pennies on what these guys are making. And I'm like, bro, how is Ben Askren and Jake Paul making 10 times what legitimate contenders are making on this same card?
And then the same breath, John Jones is struggling and trying to make a fraction of what they're making for YouTube.
What I'm seeing from him doesn't give me any confidence in this pick, but because I feel like I want to honor what I think is being asked here, I'm going to pick and say I think Askren will win about the ugliest decision you can possibly win. I just think he's going to be able to tire Jake out and make it just a really ugly, bad-looking fight. But I think he'll be able to wear him out and get him there. Could Jake Paul knock him out? Sure, but the only person who's I was just gonna say it took Masvidal sprinting at him and throwing his knee as hard as he could to put him out.
From hell,
so I don't know. I don't know if I think he's gonna get knocked out.
I got to root for Askren.
Yeah, we got.
I've got to root for him.
He's nearer to our hearts.
Most of the world is rooting for him.
Yeah.
Man, your handwriting. What's the number one thing to improve your striking?
Should have been a doctor. Number one thing to improve the striking is shadowboxing. My students have heard me say this a ton, but this is true of everyone. We could go around, and I will often do this in class. I'll ask my students, like, who's your favorite striker? MMA, boxing, any format. Who's your favorite striker? Who's your favorite striker? Who's your favorite striker? And unless they're giving out a jokey answer, the truth is, no matter who they name, you can go find footage of those people shadowboxing. They do it every day. They do it frequently, and they get critiqued on it by their coach. You can find footage of them doing it. That's just the thing, is like, you need to take those fundamental movements we were talking about in our first question, and you need to make them your own. And the only way that happens is if you're moving in realistic ways with it, right? You should do that on your own time too, because as important as it is to focus during class, and you should be, it's important to keep these techniques on your brain. And so I think just by the virtue of moving around in a realistic way or in a fighting fashion, using some of the techniques you're learning, staying light on your feet, working specific footwork patterns and stuff, at home or in a different setting, I think that it keeps it in your brain and helps you digest it just by doing so. That's the number one thing.
This next one is actually kind of more in your realm too. It's how can someone improve their head movement at home?
Kind of the same answer, but I would add one thing that helped me a whole lot in both my striking defense and head movement, because I never had problems hitting people. I could always land punches. From day one, I was good at getting punches to the other person. But I was very hittable. Very, very hittable to start with. And I was lucky to have Lawson, who's featured on our channel. I was lucky to have training partners who would kind of let me know and drop hints like, hey man, you don't need to be taking as much damage as you are. You don't need to be getting hit this often or anything. And of course, there was, the singer's voice, both Rory and Adam. I could always hear, Blackman, hands up, Blackman, hands up. So, but this felt like hands up to me. In the room, this felt like hands up. I could feel my hands on my face. This is hands up. Now, of course, you could see what I couldn't at the time. What I could realize at the time is this is not protecting my face. So I took my shadow boxing and I started doing it when I just got sick of, when I lost my first fight. And I can't remember if it was after my second fight where I lost or if it was in between my first and second. But I decided I need to get my defense better. I need to fix this. And I started shadowboxing in the mirror, because it's a whole different thing for me to say, I feel like I'm doing this right. I feel like I'm doing this right. And then to look at myself in the mirror, and you almost like take on like a predatory role. You're looking at the person in the mirror and thinking like, could I bust that person up? If your hand's down here, the answer is yes. You can immediately see all of your flaws and weaknesses. I think that's a great habit and a good way to learn head movement and defense, making sure you're getting offline.
What about more of like a practical thing? I've never done this, but I have seen it done. I mean, obviously, anything you can find on the internet is accurate. But what about like using tools, like getting a string and tying it to a tennis ball and nailing it to the roof? Does that help?
When you said tools, I thought you might be going for like a wrench. It's like swing a wrench.
You can dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball.
I mean,
does
I
that
think
stuff work?
It does. It's a lot of setup for a similar thing, though. But it still may be that it still may be that you need to internalize. You need to see yourself do it wrong. So I would either way I would do that. But
too.
What?
Videotape yourself.
Absolutely, and that's something that I started doing that helped a whole lot. When I was getting ready for a fight, I'd have somebody tape my sparring, because you can really see things. It's again, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to see yourself do it. So yeah, I think. Thoughts on McGregor versus Porier 3? This one actually had interesting developments since this question dropped, and there's a second part. Is this the fight that you think that like people want to see? Is this the best fight for that division for those guys?
It's the best fight for the division? No. Do people want to see it? No, until this week, when he withheld the charity money.
Yeah.
Or however you want to paint the picture. Whatever actually happened.
Who knows?
I think people want to see it now. I think that's part of McGregor's play. I do think it's kind of a jerk move, to be completely honest. I think it worked, to his credit.
Yeah.
I think Porier wants to get paid, just like anyone does.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he should have fought for a title. He more than deserved it. I don't know why he decided not to. I know why he decided not to.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Conor's trying to kind of play
this,
off of. But
this kind of falls under that same thing of like, does this fight have a right to exist? Yes. All fights do. If two people agree, if the commission is willing to say this looks like it could be somewhat competitive, sure, it does. But, this puts the momentum. Both of these guys fought each other initially to like build some kind of momentum to rise back to the top of the division, do something special, and then agreed not to just let the division continue without them in order to get another payday. And it's worth noting that Porier stands to gain money. He does, but I assume Conor would be like if he won the title, if he fought for the title and he won it, Conor would still be angling for that rematch, because Conor's about I just want the biggest fight possible, no matter what. I think that this is the best matchup for Connor. I think that this is because otherwise, his record in the division is either like 1-3 now or something. It's not a great record in this division, and his last win was years ago. So, he has a little heat. If he can keep animosity going, this is his best play.
Oh, he has to prove.
Yeah.
And I think he gets the rematch.
Yeah. I think for
he's
sure.
He's too smart of a guy. His
I can
boxing
see.
is too crisp. I think he gets the rematch. And I think it's
And he traditionally does better in rematches.
Yeah.
He traditionally does better in rematches. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in it. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm with you. I favored Connor in that first fight. I've always said that calf kick style is good against wide stances. I never thought that Porier was going to be the guy to do it.
Yeah.
I always thought that if he fought Gaethje would do it, or I thought something like that. I didn't give Porier any credit. I was totally wrong on this, and somehow
I still you after, and you were like, he did what?
Yeah, exactly.
You could not believe it.
I couldn't believe it was him who did it. So I should have learned, and I should be picking Porier for this fight. But if they fight again, I'm still going to say Connor. As much as it pains me to say it, I like Porier a lot, but
he makes that adjustment.
I think so. I think a blow to Connor's ego is the biggest motivator for him. I think he has trouble motivating without that. I think a rematch where he got finished with strikes, I think really motivates him, and I see him making adjustments that probably weren't happening in this camp. So
I agree.
Yep.
All right, we got to run through these because we don't have too much time. Why did you start the channel? Or why did you want to start the channel? AKA, also, why did you start the channel?
Something like this has been in the back of my head for a long time, and I think it was a lot of. But the problem is, a lot of things kind of bang around in the back of my head for a long time, and I just, I'm always busy. I've always got stuff going on. I've always got reasons why it's, I can't pull a trigger on it now, and it kind of lined up. And I credit you with being the kindling underneath it, being like, well, look, let's do it. Yeah, I mean, I think it was really as simple as that.
Yeah, well, I think we've always known we wanted to, at least in some capacity, start Black and Fight Academy, a physical location Black and Fight Academy. Mm-hmm. And in this stage of life where I'm at, I'm very career focused. You've got a little one. It's not the right time. And kind of like my business background said, why are we waiting until we have set aside capital and time in order to open up a building and do all of that? We could start something right now. And for us, it really was, why not start an online platform right now? At the worst case scenario, in X amount of years when we do open this thing, we have a full curriculum built.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what we would need to develop anyways. And at the worst case scenario, we're having fun and we're enjoying it. And we've loved the feedback since.
Yeah.
But really the question was, why are we waiting it?
Sure. We already multiple times a week talk about fights and talk about techniques and things like those. So it is we text each other all the time. So we're going to be having the conversations anyway. Whenever we see each other, we already, whenever we're at Mom's, she's always, don't knock over the furniture or anything like that. So it's a facet of our life anyway. It made sense. And again, Jordan just, had the right, especially as things were shutting down. I think that we initially committed to this as things were like just coming out of like shutdowns. And it was like, everything's automated anyway right now. We have no reason not to do this. Yeah. So it made sense. It made perfect sense at that point. This is a question that actually has a background. It is, what would we do if we were underwater and Jason popped up behind us with a fish in his pocket and he attacked us? Now the answer to these kind of questions is always, we just die. We die. The answer to the whole joke behind this kind of question is, there are people who will ask you questions that have no answer. And I don't know why they think it's a conversation starter. I had a friend growing up, you had this friend as well, who used to ask questions like, what would you do if Michael Myers jumped out and stabbed you in the chest? Like, you die. What do you mean? There's no question.
That's
no
the worst. I get that all the time where someone will say like, so you trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What would you do if someone came at you with a knife? And it's like,
somebody
run. I would run like anyone else.
Bro, what if somebody shot you in the head?
It's
what do you mean? What do you mean? There's no question there.
As I'm falling to my death, that armbar.
This has as funny as that is, though, now that I'm reading it out loud and thinking of it, there's an analog to coaching too, though, is that people always want to know how to stop something from going south at the worst, like the furthest along. How do I stop getting knocked out if I'm already rocked and I'm teetering and they push me against the fence and too much? There's too many ands there. Fix it early. Fix it early. How do I stop a rear naked choke when somebody's got full hooks and harness? They're deep. They're squeezing and they've bitten their head down. They're nice and tight with it. And I feel I'm going. What's the one thing? Well, you didn't just magically end up in this position. You made probably several mistakes to get here. It's pretty. There's a lot of ego involved in thinking, oh, I've got one movement and I'm out. I'm back on top. I'm back in this, baby.
But it's so easy to ask that because you always want to know what's your worst case scenario. I asked Chase that. We did a private today, and I asked Chase that question: is once you get the bite on the heel, you've got your your locks in, you've got everything extended. What do you do? And you're just like, well, at that point, you're probably gonna tap.
Yeah, you're gonna tap
or tear something.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, please don't try and use your jiu-jitsu on someone with a knife or a gun.
Yeah.
Please, that's our disclosure.
That goes back to handle that situation far earlier than that. This question we actually will name. This is Jordan's question. He posted it on that first video where we were announcing what was going on with our hair in that video. And it's a good question. I'm surprised no one else asked because we were looking rough in that video.
We just woke up.
Yeah, just woke up.
We were going to get breakfast.
Getting a little breakfast.
We said, let's film something. It'd be a great time. And it was a great time.
Yeah. It was. And
both of us don't really care about
I was
hair.
way outside of a haircut. I was lacking a haircut for quite a while, so hopefully it looks better now. And that was what was going on. It was the timing was just what it was.
All right, next, because my phone's dying, I've been told.
Okay.
Who would win in a fight between a bear and gorilla? I vote bear all the way. I think the gorilla gets a couple good shots, one bite from the bear, and it's over.
I think a gorilla. I think you got to go with dexterity.
I've watched videos on this in the bear one every time.
Oh, were you cheating? Were you?
No, I've watched videos on this. They used to do that show where they pin like two creatures together.
That show.
There was one. It was a bear, and he won.
I don't believe that.
He did. What's going to happen?
Gorilla. I think you can strangle him. I think you strangle him. I think you can knock him over. I think that the gorilla moves better than the bear. And if nothing else,
doesn't the bear outweigh him by like 300 pounds?
It depends on what kind of bear.
We're going grizzly or polar.
All right. Well, hold on now.
You can go silverback. Choose your best gorilla, and I'll choose my best.
Silverback gorilla, polar bear. Where are they fighting as well?
Well, if they're in the jungle and he's got trees to run around, I still take the polar bear to be honest.
No way.
That weighs about like 200 pounds.
Bro, that gorilla
still
is
grizzly.
I
would still say grizzly. You're in like a golf court. There's no net or tennis court. There's no net. Just flat ground. They go at it.
Golf court
with no net. Can you believe it?
I gotta say, I'm still gonna go with gorilla.
You tell us your thoughts, because I'm going bear. I'm going to get the most votes.
Next question, we'll split each way. What are our thoughts on Southpaws? I'll do MMA or striking. You do jiu-jitsu. Striking, Southpaws are annoying to go against, but there is a misconception with them in that there's nothing magical about, like the Southpaw advantage really doesn't have anything to do with Southpaws. It has to do with the open stance, where our front legs are near each other, or front hands, and our rear legs are far, meaning that our power side is the same. That dynamic is interesting, and it's the advantage you have if you're a Southpaw, or if you're the person who's always more often going to be in that scenario, is you know the rules a little better. You want to get your foot outside, you want to fire from your power side, and you want everything to lead them into your power side. So you're going to be better at doing that than somebody who's not used to working with you. Jiu-jitsu, do you have any stance preference or something that trips you up, or is it pretty?
It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends on what side you drill things. At the end of the day, I like to drill things on both sides. I've also heard that it's best to drill on one side.
Marcellus says that, right?
Yeah, he said you just master one side, which is great. The problem is, what if the guy approaches you with the other foot and you're trying to pull that Della Diva or that guard? That's the only struggle that I have with it. But I mean, I've got just expand your game. Yeah. Honestly, in jiu-jitsu, he's so close to you. If he's postured one way, he's either giving the arm drag on this side, or I mean, there's just a bunch of different things you can do. I don't know if that matters as much until you're looking at takedowns, of course, which it does.
And we have one more question, and that is, can we put out a compilation of competition footage? I've put out a couple little things. I have more competition footage. Not all of it is. Some of it I don't know if I have the rights to put out. First of all, for some of my MMA stuff, And then another thing is I have some footage of me in competition, but they're against other SBG competitors, and I don't know how I feel about like showing me. I luckily I win the the matches I'm talking about, so I don't know how I feel about that.
If you're watching this video,
yeah, if you're watching this video, I don't know how I feel about that, especially because I know at least one of them has become a really capable grappler, and that may be a different scenario if we were to roll at this point. So
I've got some footage, but it's such old footage that it's one of those where you look at it and you're like, oh.
Like and comment if you want to see baby Jordan grappling,
and you're just like,
let us
what
know
was
what
I
you think.
doing? I was so gangly, so sloppy.
Jordan built like a baby horse,
doing.
choking fools out.
Just watching some old footage that's pretty horrible.
Here's the thing: if we get enough comments on this video, we get several comments on this video saying "Baby Horse Jordan," we will release the Kraken. We'll put the footage out there.
As long as you agree that is not nowhere near a representation.
It's not a representation.
It's a horrible representation.
It's just a novelty, but give
I was like
what
150 pounds and 6'4".
So now that we have ended our questions, real quick, I want to announce the winner of the gift card for the best comment is Matt Piper. Matt Piper and his luxurious mane of hair. Thank you so much, Matt, for contributing, and thank you all. Continue to follow us. Be looking at Facebook. We'll have the schedule up. We'll be talking about other things. And we've got some interesting stuff down the pipe. So be listening. Keep your ear to the ground.
Got some special guests.
Very
high-level competitors.
We've got the series coming out that we want to start doing where you can follow them. And we may make some playlists out of those. And then also we want to do some conversation type videos where we're just talking on different topics. So be commenting. Let us know. What kind of stuff you want us talking? Because we may get ideas for other videos from those comments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my big thing is the more you engage with us, the more we can engage with you and really start to film stuff that's more specific.
Yep.
If you're having trouble in some particular area, tell us and we'll shoot the video. And if we don't know, we'll go find someone who does and he'll shoot the video with us.
Yeah.
So the more you engage, the better. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. See you.